This is The Raid, exposing the dark world of America's deportation machine. I'm your host, John Carlos Frey. On the podcast today are journalists from a local community newspaper in Los Angeles called CALO News, Amairani Hernandez and Michelle Zacarias. CALO News is a nonprofit Latina-led digital news organization focused on providing in-depth, culturally relevant reporting for the Latino communities in California and Arizona, filling gaps left by mainstream media with English-language content that empowers, engages, and accurately reflects their diverse experiences on issues from politics to culture. They use multimedia community events and partnerships to tell authentic stories and build civic participation. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Of course. You wanted to talk about a story that you were working on. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, there's not just one story. I think there's a lot of different stories that are happening right now. A lot of confusion around what might possibly be the demotion of Gregory Bovino, who's been like the commander at large and overseeing all of these deportation and enforcement tactics throughout the country. But what we're seeing factually in this moment is that the Department of Homeland Security is denying it. The White House is denying it. But we do know that Greg Bovino was removed from Minneapolis and potentially might be replaced by Tom Homan, who is not much better given his track record and history. So, obviously a lot of this information is still coming out and we're seeing how it's playing. But I do think that this marks like a shift. Right? I think that people are now in some ways mobilizing in ways that they weren't before. And there are certain demographics of the population that are being much more outspoken now that weren't previously being outspoken because they weren't as directly impacted.
Can we, just for background for people who maybe have heard the name Greg Bovino, but may not know his role and why he's being removed or where he's going? Just a little background of Greg. He was in charge of what? They tapped him to do what?
Essentially, he's the one that's been overseeing all of the federal enforcement, or as I would refer to it, invasion tactics that we've seen play out throughout the country. So Southern California specifically was a trial run for what the Trump administration could get away with enacting throughout the rest of the country. And Greg Bovino was steering the ship. And so back in June, when we first got hit with all of these different entities, right, we got really attacked on all fronts by federal agents, by the National Guard, by the LAPD, the LASD, the U.S. Marines. We were putting up a resistance, but they were also learning and adapting from that. So every single place that they've been to since Southern California has been an escalation of violence led by Gregory Bovino.
He's the mastermind of how and when and how hard to hit. He also seems to be loving the camera. I mean, he's in front of the camera as often as he can. I would even describe him as flamboyant. He's always dressed to the nine in his military gear. And he also seems very insensitive to what we're seeing. We're seeing people ripped from their families. We're seeing people pulled from their cars, people being shot, obviously. And every time I see him on camera, that doesn't seem to be an issue.
Right.
This is almost like a military operation.
Yeah. And he was selected intentionally, right? We have a president who was a, former reality TV show star. And I think that the selection of Greg Bovino specifically adds on to kind of like the element of performance and the circus that the Trump administration has created around him. They wanted someone who was dismissive and rude and unapologetic about their blatant disregard and violation of people's rights. And so, unfortunately, as he's continued to double down on those tactics and has gone on national television after recent shootings and said basically like, well, like, too bad, right? Like, he's essentially said it was justified. People are starting to really, I think finally understand, even though it's taken them a while, there are no limits There are no regulations. There's no policy. There's no line that can be drawn in the sand under this administration's enforcement tactics.
And then lastly, in your reporting about this particular topic, and we'll hit a few more, and I'm probably going to argue with you on something that you said earlier, but that'll be later. Where's he going? He was the mastermind of these tactics and events. They had all these fancy names for whenever they would go to a different city. Now, where is he going?
He's coming back to California, allegedly.
Because he was too out there? He was too insensitive? I mean, do we have a reason?
I think the argument is that right now we're seeing the public sentiment turn. And I do think that there is a shift happening right now that hadn't previously been in place. And you guys can feel free to disagree with me, but I think we're seeing a lot of people who were previously, I think, on the apolitical spectrum now seeing the ways in which people's rights are being violated blatantly. People are being executed in broad daylight. People that they claimed, that the administration claimed they were not targeting, are becoming targets of the state. And so I think Greg Bovino getting on national television and basically doubling down was kind of like the final straw, because it's already a really delicate system that they're trying to uphold. It's a facade, right? They're trying to uphold this facade that things are going just as they planned, things are in order, and there haven't been any mistakes, but you're slowly seeing the system collapse on itself.
And he was highly insensitive to the victims, or the victims especially of the shootings. He basically called them, as Kristi Noem would, terrorists and agitators and,
right,
that sort of thing. So it was their fault, basically, that they got shot.
Right. And Kristi Noem is, as I've heard, also kind of on thin ice. And I don't think it ultimately matters whether they went on national television and called them domestic terrorists. I think they're scapegoats. I think this has always been the plan of the Trump administration. This is what they campaigned on. This is what they promised. This is what they're doing. But because of public sentiment shifting and people speaking out, now they need someone to kind of catch the blame for it. And so that's why even now, as there's like rumors of Tom Homan replacing Gregory Bovino, that's not necessarily like a victory. That's not a huge shift.
No. Tom Homan is Greg Bovino in different clothing.
Right, in different fonts, essentially.
I would like Amairani to tell us what you're working on.
So recently it's been a little bit of a health stories, but most recently on the immigration side, it's been a story that I did on Montebello, who got hit maybe like a week and a half ago. They've been hit by immigration operations a couple of times throughout this year and last year. But this one specific car wash has been targeted about 3 times. And each time they've taken some of the employees who have been undocumented and some who have who just were targeted because they looked a certain way, even though they had the proper documentation. There was also another video that was posted on social media by another like community member, and it was pretty out there. A lot of people had recorded this, but it was construction workers working at a private home at a rooftop, and you can see clearly that where ICE agents were surrounding the area. You can see one of the construction workers moving the staircase so that they wouldn't climb. And by the time he tried moving it, it was a little too late. The ICE agent had grabbed the ladder, and at that point, you can see the construction workers jumping from rooftop to rooftop. So that was pretty hard to see, especially because I was once like a community member of Montebello. So just seeing that hit a little bit of, home.
For our listeners, Montebello is basically east of Los Angeles, of downtown.
Yeah, it's
right?
near Commerce, East LA, Pico Rivera.
And just a couple questions. One on the car wash. If I'm a car wash owner and immigration officials you say the word hit, meaning that there was some kind of a raid there?
The first time that they had gone, they took, I think about 2 or 3 employees, and the car wash footage, they had cameras installed in the car wash, and you can clearly see the raid happening. And one of the employees, or I'm not sure if it was the owner of the car wash, but they had said, like, I had quoted, "We will be back." And they definitely came back and took more of the employees.
And so don't the employees know they're going to come back? I mean, if I'm undocumented, is that a safe place for me to work?
Probably not, because a lot of these places are being targeted. It's not just the car wash in Montebello. There's other car washes that have been targeted, like Whittier or in East LA. These are just places that are being targeted because they know the workers are kind of being stereotyped because of the way that they look, or, you know.
So if I'm brown and I work at a car wash, according to an immigration official, I'm probably here illegally, or I don't have papers.
Most likely. On
the construction story, I don't know if I got the picture right. People were working, construction workers were working on the roof, mm-hmm. and immigration officials went up on the roof or pulled the ladders or
grabbed the ladder from the construction worker.
So they had the only way they could stay without getting arrested was to stay on the roof?
Either to stay on the roof or like what they did.
Hop from roof to roof, from house to house?
Yeah.
To avoid being arrested?
Yes.
And were they eventually caught?
Based on, I think the media reports, they weren't sure if one of them was took, but I think most likely.
So they don't have a way. I'm trying to look at I don't think I've seen the video, but I'm thinking that an immigration official, if they were doing it properly, would ask you for proof of legal residency. But they see a brown guy working construction
at a private home, too.
Automatically, they're just going to grab him without him being able to identify himself or show proof of legal residency. They're just going to grab him because he's a brown construction worker, right?
I mean, we've already seen that immigration agents have taken people even with the proper documentation. So at this point, I think we're seeing that everyone who looks a certain way is being targeted, whether you have the proper papers or not.
I think it's a little old now, but I just kind of am curious of your take when you hear the administration, who still says it to this day, 6 months into the raids or 8 months in, however far in we are to these raids, they're only going after the worst of the worst.
No, absolutely not. And I saw that because Kern County, where I live, which is Bakersfield, was targeted first with an immigration raid. So it first happened in Kern County in January 7, where supposedly they were going after the criminals, but we saw that they were just targeting anybody who looked a certain way. Again, basically racial profiling. They weren't even asking for the right documentation, whether they were U.S. citizens or not. They were just taking people who looked, again, a certain way.
Where was the raid in Kern County? On a farm?
No. It happened at a Home Depot. It happened on the freeway. People going to work. Bovino?
Greg Bovino.
Yeah. Greg. He was there. He was there when the operation happened. He had sent 65 agents. Border Patrol was out there in Kern County doing the first immigration raid. They had no. Why was Border Patrol out there in Kern County, first of all?
Because there's a lot of brown people there.
Exactly.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. We're a year in now, and we're seeing the numbers on this. And there have been numerous reports that have come out at this point showing that a majority of the people that they detained had no previous criminal background. Mm-hmm. There was this really excellent investigative report done by reporter Nicole Foy for ProPublica about the U.S. immigrants that had been detained by ICE and Border Patrol. I mean, there's overwhelming evidence that they are not targeting quote unquote criminals. And one thing that I really want to name is that Greg Bovino has gone on television multiple times on the record and said, I don't care, because if you are here in this country without papers, you are acting in against the law, right? If you are an illegal immigrant, quote unquote, then you are a criminal by default. So they're not looking for anyone specifically who has committed a crime. They're just looking for anyone who's undocumented.
I mean, I understand that thinking. I don't really understand it, because I think that everything that's happening is heinous. So just know that that's where I'm coming from, that this is, I mean, I've been covering this for a long time and it's the worst I've ever seen it. But it is not a crime to cross the border without papers. It is an administrative offense. It is equivalent to not paying your parking ticket or having something expire, your tags on your license or something like that, where typically the crime, the punishment, if it is a crime, is to be deported.
Right.
That is what is the resolve of that. So when they say that they're criminals, it's not really true. If you cross a second time, they can give you a felony. If you're caught in the interior, that's possible that you may be committing a felony there. But for the most part, the people that they're grabbing are people who've been here by just crossing the border or their visas have expired. So,
Right.
so I want to ask you a little bit more about Bovino. We had somebody on the podcast who's done some pretty deep dives into the man himself. He was the sector chief of the El Centro sector in and along the U.S.-Mexico border. It's divided up by sectors, different sectors in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And his is in Eastern California in a desert area called El Centro. And that's for the listeners who may not know it. And this particular podcast guest that we had is a reporter, and he found that Greg Bovino's sector, before he was tapped to do these operations, was the most violent. He abused use of force. It was almost 4 times higher than any other sector. He would use his agents to beat people up without provocation. They would fire their weapons when they were not fired upon. He was a bad dude. He was a really aggressive, over-the-top, excessive use of force, more than any other sector. And that's why they picked him. That's why they picked him, because he was going to be rough. And he was going to be tough. So when I said I would probably differ with you on some of the things that you said, here's where I want to ask you. This is my thought. They're moving him back to El Centro, where he was the chief. I don't think for any other reason but to cool down what's happening. I don't think they're going soft on immigration enforcement. I don't think they're going to change tactics. It's a PR stunt. I think they're just trying to get everybody to calm down a little bit. And I'm wondering what you might think about that. It just feels like it's for the cameras.
No, I agree partially with that sentiment. I agree completely with that sentiment, in that I do think that they are trying to make sure that things don't get worse for them, right? Like PR wise, right? They want to make sure that they continue to maintain the support that they maintain. And I don't think that, like, tactically things are going to change. So I agree with that. I also feel like this is still a response to something, right? Like, this is still a change or a response to something that has, like, shifted. And the reason that I say there's a shift is more toward, like, the public sentiment. Because when you've got people like the NRA putting out public statements about how, for example, the man Alex Preddy, who was shot in Minneapolis, has every right to bear arms. Like, something internally is shifting. When people who have traditionally been your supporters are saying, wait, we don't agree with this, then there has to be a response to it.
It's my understanding that it comes from Trump. Trump hates the coverage that he's seeing. He hates the negative coverage that he's seeing. It's making him look bad. So how can I PR spin this so that I don't look so bad? He even went on camera to say that Renee Good's parents were Trump supporters.
Right.
To make it look like I'm a good guy. See, they even like me. I hope they still like me. So it's more about what he looks like, it appears to me. Let's move the chess players around a little bit and disguise everything.
Trump is kind of like the center figure in all of this. There are so many people around him that are continuing to enable and support the violent tactics of this administration. And so I tend not to hyperfixate on him as much, even though he is kind of like in the topic of every conversation. I think to your point about like Greg Bovino going back to like where he originally came from, if he is, which we know as bad as he has historically been, he's going to continue enacting that type of violence now back where he was.
He knows nothing else.
Exactly. And so, you know, one of the things that I always say that I give a lot of the flack to the Democrats for is that I feel like often we don't name like the intersections of what happened with Black Lives Matter and what's happening now, and specifically the way in which a lot of the Democrats in the aftermath of that really advocated for more surveillance, for increase in police funding, for militarization of our police forces. And so now we're seeing the direct consequence of that. Now we have these overinflated budgets for ICE, for militarized police forces, for, essentially a secret police force. And so really understanding like this is not just about the Trump administration, but all of these intersecting systems of violence that have slowly been getting more and more robust and more well-funded over the course of like many, many years.
The replacement for Greg Bovino is Tom Homan, who was accused and documented that he took $50,000 bribe from FBI agents, and nobody knows where that $50,000 came from. He's also one of the architects of what we're seeing today. So I don't think that this is a calming down of anything. If anything, he's just another Greg Bovino, maybe even worse. He's a corrupt Greg Bovino. So I don't know. Have you been doing any looking into who Tom Homan is? I
mean, just the general information of what's come out. Obviously, we know a little bit about his history, and you named a lot of it. Like I said, I agree with you in that I don't think that this is necessarily going to change anything. This is just a response. I don't even know at this point, to be honest, if the Republicans will amicably allow for a legal election come like the next term. So
I want to do that last. We need to talk about why we're seeing what we're seeing, but it's a good point.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I try to ground myself in as a reporter is that there are a lot of people on the ground that are doing really important work. Especially in my community. Obviously, I live in Long Beach, but like the South Bay is doing some incredible organizing right now, specifically around supporting immigrants. There are people who patrol Terminal Island every morning, which is where federal agents stage pretty much every single day before they go out and enact terror throughout communities. And people go out there, they take down license plates and vehicles and send that information out to the public so that they can be warned.
I hear that the raids are in Minneapolis, and maybe now they're calming down. But for the last couple of weeks, it's been hell there. But they're also going on still here, right? I mean, they're not as big. They're not as bold. There's not as many agents around. Can you just describe what you're seeing on a daily basis? Like I'm watching LA Taco. I'm reading your newspaper, and I'm seeing people being taken every single day.
Yeah, it's literally every day. And I mean, LA Taco is doing a great job in tracking how many people are being basically abducted every day. But like I said, we're seeing them happen in Pico Rivera, El Monte, Montebello, East LA, Commerce, any surrounding area, any city that is surrounded nearby those areas. And it's, like I said, a lot of those cities and communities, it's a lot of Latino, a big Latino population. So these cities are heavily being targeted every day. Like I said, car washes, random people on the streets, street vendors, at the Home Depot. These are common areas where people, individuals who are just, going out about their day are being targeted.
And are the tactics a little bit different than we're seeing in Minneapolis? There's no pepper balls. There's no gas. There's not a lot of people there's not this big show of force, right?
Right.
Can you kind of describe how they're being taken?
Well, based on what we've seen, I mean, I remember, I think last year, in Boyle Heights, ICE agents basically, did a whole car accident with a family inside their car to stop them. I'm not sure what kind of...
You mean they smashed into their car?
Yeah, they smashed into their car. And I mean, we've seen those kind of tactics happening, not just here in LA County, Orange County, the Inland Empire, where they're basically crashing into people's car. Some of them are just being taken without any proof, just being targeted.
LA Taco calls it kidnapping. Do you see it that way?
Yes, because these people are not identifying themselves. If someone took me and I don't know if it's the police or an ICE agent, I'm thinking I'm getting kidnapped at that point.
Were you born here?
I wasn't.
Do you want to talk about your status?
Yeah, I'm now a U.S. citizen. But growing up as a kid, I was undocumented. And so the reason why I like reporting on this issue is because I know how it feels. I know how it feels to be scared, to be taken away. Even as a kid, you feel that. So I feel that for the kids now. I've been covering a lot of the kids' walkouts, and I talk to these kids, and all of these kids are scared either to get taken away from their families, getting their parents taken away, not knowing what to do. It's a scary thing to think about, even as a kid. I became a U.S. citizen when I was a senior in high school. So So I know what it's like for those people currently who are on the fence of, should I stay here, or having a hard decision to, maybe I should go back to where I used to live.
When you say you know how they feel, were you, as a kid before high school, before you were a senior, were you always looking over your shoulder? Were you wondering if you were going to get taken?
Yes, I was always scared. Even there's been a couple of times where my dad got pulled over by the cops, and it was just because of a traffic light, or it was a small mistake, traffic mistake, and I was scared for my life. I'm like, okay, maybe this is the time where either my dad, even though he was a U.S. citizen, maybe he gets targeted or I get targeted.
So it's always in the back of your mind.
It's always on the back of my mind. Even now, as a U.S. citizen, I'm scared. I'm scared to get pulled over by the cops. I'm scared to get pulled over by an ICE agent, because at this point we're seeing that even if you're a U.S. citizen, you're still being targeted. Where
would you go? I hate to even think about it, and maybe it's a stupid even scenario, but if you got taken, where would they take you? Where would you be deported to?
Back to Sinaloa, Mexico.
Do you have family there?
I do have family, but I don't have a close relationship to them. I've lived my whole life here.
What's interesting? We actually started having these conversations in our newsroom, and this was something that I think, my colleagues and I sat down together and just one day decided to kind of lay out the logistics for. So if I got detained, what would it look like? Who would we reach out to?
You started planning?
Yeah. I mean, we are doing high-risk reporting. We are a newsroom that is almost entirely led by either immigrants or, children of immigrants. We are
Latinas.
Latino outlet, just a big target.
Yeah.
And then we just add that, and we see that on our social media, ever since, the Trump administration, having a Latino news outlet, we can see how we're heavily targeted, even on social media every day.
What do you mean? Are they saying nasty things on social media?
Nasty things on social media.
Like you should, go back to your country and
yes.
Yeah. Right-wingers definitely target our comments because, obviously we've reported on things that ruffle feathers, and you can see that they wait for us to post certain stories. But, I think even amongst ourselves, having that plan and having that clarity around who we need to reach out to, what that would look like, had been helpful, I think.
Just having a plan.
Yeah.
What's the plan?
Well, if you want a breakdown, I recently co-organized a Southern California journalism newsroom convening with the amazing editor Michelle Sena Rosa, and my colleague from CALO News, Brenda Verano, and I put together kind of a worksheet, and it was an establishment of who to contact in case of an emergency, who do we want legal support, do we want support from other newsrooms. It was a breakdown. And one of the reasons we put this together, obviously, aside from the high-risk reporting that we've done, is that I've been detained before by police and things like that. And so I kind of had internally already been through the process, and I'm disabled, right? And so I wear a prosthetic leg. And when I was previously detained, the police tried to take my prosthetic leg away. And
are you kidding me?
Yeah. And so, I've been in a lot of situations with a lot of different state-sanctioned entities and police departments where I had to kind of think through every single step of the process. And so I really wanted to make sure that we were extremely ready for any circumstance. And I even said, in our newsroom convening when we had our breakout about this, if you are someone who has asthma, you have to think about that. What if you don't have access to your inhaler? If you are someone who...
you were just covering the protests last year where they were massive in LA. And I remember because I do the social media for CALO. And I remember she's like, I'm sending you all the videos. She's like, they're going to start throwing the gas. The police department is going to start going crazy, basically. And she's like, and obviously she has her prosthetic leg. She's like, I don't know. I'm going to make it fast enough. And I remember that day it got heavy on the news. You can see all that, that she had mentioned that was going to go down. It went down.
I don't know a lot of white people who sit around the dinner table saying, if you get kidnapped, we need to have a plan of where you're going to go and who you're going to call and who your emergency contacts are.
Going back, even if you have papers, Even if you're a reporter.
Either way,
you're going to get targeted.
If you are being detained in any way, shape, or form, whether it's by the police or federal agents. I mean, one of the stories I wrote for CALO News was about a U.S. immigrant, Adrian Martinez, who was detained by federal agents, and his mom could not find him for over 24 hours. And that story, I mean, went viral for us because she was frantically searching for her son, who is a U.S. citizen, should have been, extremely quick to process, and was essentially just gone. And so even now, like, we are seeing our current administration push the boundaries of our constitutional rights. So I would rather be over-prepared than not know what to do in a moment of crisis like that.
I mean, Renee, Alex, white people got shot, U.S. citizens. What does that lead to us?
With no investigation and no responsibility, no accountability.
And there won't be an investigation, so many FBI agents or directors of the FBI have recently in weeks just like left their job because they haven't been allowed to investigate further. So I think for us, it's a precaution. We're hoping that it never gets to that point, obviously, but I think it's something that we encourage other local news outlets to do because we don't have the protections that legacy media has. We don't have a lawyer on retainer. So we need to find protection with one another.
Is it fair to say that you are making these plans because you are all brown and Latinas and that's who the target is?
Yeah, it's
unfortunately, yeah.
I don't think the New York Times, who is probably predominantly white, I'm just assuming that there are a lot of white folks, they're not making these plans. You're right, they have attorneys and they have ways of getting people out of detention, but
but we don't have that money.
You're also the people they're going after.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're out there in the field, either covering the protests, walkouts, or immigration raids. We're out there. We fit the profile.
So when you're out there in public and you're covering a place where there are immigration officials, like a protest or a raid or something like that, do you think they're going to get me?
It's a high percentage that they will. I mean, they were even targeting. But do you think for
yourself that they're going to get you?
Yeah.
They're gonna sweep you up along with the
why wouldn't they?
Well, I don't know if I would want to go there. You're in the line of fire.
Yeah.
You don't think about that?
I do. I mean, it's my job and I like what I do, but I think at the end of the day, I mean, us reporters have an option whether to continue doing the work that we want to do or not. And I think our answer is, we're going to continue doing the work that we do.
Can I ask you your status, or you do?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in the United States. I grew up with an undocumented family. I write about this in one of my columns. I had childhood cancer when I was really young, and my mom was undocumented at the time. Since then, she'd become a naturalized citizen. But, even seeing the stories of all of these different individuals, disabled individuals, children with cancer, children with caretakers who have been stripped away from their home, it's so personal to me. And like Amairani, I love the work that I do. I would be doing this regardless. But this feels like a moment where I get to lean into some of my privileges as a U.S. citizen, as someone who I think is sometimes perceived as racially ambiguous. I get to be in these spaces with, I think, less fear than other people might be. And I take that responsibility very seriously. And so when I'm out there, I assess my risk like everybody else. Something doesn't feel safe, I move back. But this is personal to me. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to bend the knee to this administration or keep the type of censorship, the mass censorship that's happening right now towards media, stop me from doing what I know is our civic responsibility.
Thank you for what you guys are doing. It's highly courageous from where I sit to see you doing this and not to give two shits about what's happening, to do it anyway. You could find another job. You could do something else that didn't put your life at risk like that. So thank you, because we all need to hear the stories. I want to switch gears with both of you a little bit. I question a lot as a journalist as to why this is happening. What is the benefit of the administration if we get rid of a whole bunch of brown people people who are not the worst of the worst. There was this whole idea that they were going to get rid of a criminal element first,
Criminal.
right? Make America safe again was sort of the mantra. That's not happening. We're just getting rid of an ethnic group for the most part. It appears
for the
to me.
majority contributes to taxes.
To taxes, to good labor, and I hate to put people in a category of laborers necessarily, but I like to sort of go back a little bit and put it into context. And for me, I've been reporting on this issue for a long time, and I think it feels to me like a development of what we've been supporting for a long time. I started my career at the U.S.-Mexico border. What we're seeing today in Minneapolis was happening at the border. Migrants were getting shot and killed. They were being brutalized, and not one Border Patrol agent was being held responsible or accountable. In the time that I was reporting there on the border, over 200 migrants were killed by Border Patrol agents. Not one of them was ever prosecuted. And these are horrible. Some people shot in the back. Some people shot 10 times. Some people shot across the border. They were all very suspicious for the most part. A lot of the individuals were not armed. And as you said a little earlier, we have been feeding this beast. We've been increasing the size of the force. We've been arming them even heavier. We've been fortifying and spending more and so on. So now all of a sudden we've been training them to be killers for the most part, and you release them onto the streets of the United States. They're not going to change just because they're in a U.S. city. This is their tactics. This is the way they are trained. They are paramilitary. That's their description. They're not a police force. They don't ask questions first. They shoot first, and then maybe questions later. So I just kind of philosophically, maybe you could tell me what you think about what I just said. Do you see it that way?
I do a little bit. I mean, you started your career, way before us.
I'm an old man.
You have the experience,
yeah.
right? And I think why we're seeing it a lot more nowadays is because, we have phones, we have social media that has played a big role in seeing what we're seeing. Yeah, raids had been happening, but we are seeing it more often, and people are seeing what we're seeing, and some people are standing up and some people are staying quiet. But their tactics, I know they call us criminals or terrorists, but we're not terrorists. Not everyone's a terrorist or a criminal. Some are mothers, fathers, kids just going to school who are being targeted.
If you look at my coverage over the course of 13 years, you'll see that I've been equally critical of both Democrats and Republicans. But I think right in this moment, we are seeing a lot of people realizing that neither party is going to be our saving grace. And a lot of the institutions that claim to have been, in allegiance with immigrant communities are sort of turning their backs on them. And so there were multiple Democrats in Congress that voted to continue funding ICE. There's multiple Democrats in Congress who recently voted to thank ICE and federal agents for their service. This was in December. And, it's just gestures, but at the end of the day, it's also symbolic to where we're at and the people that represent this country and the direction that they're steering us in.
I see it we take a look maybe at Native Americans, and they suffer from high levels of alcoholism, poverty, low education levels. We built that. We took their lands away from them. We hoarded them. We killed them. We put them on reservations, and now we sort of blame them for the way that they live. And I'm speaking stereotypically and generally. So what we're seeing in the streets of Minneapolis, we did that. We said it's okay to go after brown people a long time ago. It's okay to kill them, and it's okay for Border Patrol agents to get off without being prosecuted. So what we're seeing now is a result of the way that we've trained them and how much money we've poured into the system. It's not necessarily unprecedented. It's unprecedented because it's happening to white people and it's happening to U.S. citizens. So that's why we're all scared now. I want to ask you, you said something that maybe we should talk about a little bit more. Make America Safe Again was a motto that was used by the administration during the campaign about immigration. it was an unsafe country because, according to Trump, we had opened the borders and they were, I don't know, they kept making the number bigger and bigger, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million undocumented in this country. Make America safe again was a motto to go after those that were here without papers. But you're saying that Make America Safe Again was more of a white supremacy motto?
Yeah, I mean, the entire mantra of whether it's Make America Safe Again or Make America Great Again, the insinuation there is that it is about making America white, Anglo-Saxon, Christian nationalist again, essentially. Like, it is about making this country the most white supremacist version that it can possibly be. And we know this because now anybody, whether you are of an immigrant background or a person of color, anyone who speaks out against this administration becomes an automatic target. So they see anyone who is in opposition of that as an interference in their ultimate goal and plan.
I mean, you live in Los Angeles, or at least in Southern California, and there's a lot of us here, right? We're actually the minority. There's more people of color in Southern California than there are white people. But would you feel out of place if you were in Minneapolis, where it's the other way around?
Where there's more white folks?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm asking, are you afraid of white folks, or do you feel...
I'm not afraid of white folks, but I wouldn't feel like I belong there.
Because of the way they treat you or the way that they have treated?
Yeah, I've had encounters with white people where I've been racially profiled. Like during the pandemic, a lot of Asians were targeted during the pandemic, and I don't look 100% Mexican for some people, and they confuse me with sometimes Asian or Filipino. And I remember going to a 99-cent store and they were saying, "It's your fault. We have the pandemic." So it's like little things, happening with just being racially profiled because I look a certain way. I mean, I go somewhere where it's just a bunch of white folks, I'm going to feel a certain way because I'm not saying all white folks are the same.
I feel like the opposite
but
now.
some people will treat me differently because of the way I look.
Chicago. I didn't grow up here. And when I first moved out here, I was really excited to be in what I consider like the majority. But after everything that's happened, I feel so skeptical and so suspicious of other Latinos. Like, it feels like there are so many uncertainties, right? Like, so many differentiating factors. And I think it's just from my assumption that, like, oh, everyone who is Latino should have...
I mean, not everyone is nice.
Right. But also, like, there's different socioeconomic backgrounds and different ethnicities. And like,
so we reached a fever pitch in Minneapolis. Greg Bovino is going back to El Centro. There's a shakeup, maybe to make it look like we're going to go softer, easier. I don't believe that that's going to happen. I believe that what we're seeing is not necessarily about immigration. I think that we are all headed towards an election where Trump is using his forces, his border patrol, his ICE agents to have a military approach to tamping down voter turnout, to maybe even calling off the elections, to increase the temperature, let's say, right before the elections, because it's looking pretty bad for the Republican Party right now. And if I were Trump, I would know that if I lost Congress and the Senate, I would probably be impeached. I might even go to jail. So they're going to fight hard to stay in office and to stay in power. And I think that the immigration raids are just a test market of how to reign terror and how to hold control. I don't know if you had a thought about, are we going to see more raids? Are we going to see less raids?
I was hoping that they would slowly decrease, but we're into the second year of his term and it's still the same. So I think we're just going to keep seeing them.
But
his 4 years.
He's making it look like, okay, we got the message. We're going to go softer. I'm going to get rid of Bovino.
No, definitely not.
He's
not going to go soft. He's not going to go soft. There's no way.
You haven't seen any evidence that this is getting less and less. It's getting worse.
No,
if anything, there's record high abductions happening right now in Southern California. And I don't say this lightly because I feel like I don't want to be an alarmist. And a lot of times in my reporting, we have so much crisis coverage. But I do think that people should expect to see more violence, escalated violence. I think we, in a lot of ways, need to stop looking to institutions as being like the sole solution, right? The Congress is not going to solely solve this issue. So I think that there needs to be a lot of discussion around like versifying our tactics and really like figuring out how we're going to not only survive the next 4 years, but beyond, or I'm sorry, at this point, it's the next 3 years, right?
You live in Bakersfield?
Yeah, but I used to live here in LA.
And do you see anything happening? I was talking to somebody who's seeing things happening in Santa Maria and Santa Barbara. And
when I go to these protests or, these walkouts organized by the students over there, I think a lot of them voice their concern for, okay, they targeted here first. They're over there in other parts of either LA County, Orange County, other parts, other cities. It's just kind of like, okay, when are they coming back here to do what they did the first time?
They will be back, is what you're saying.
Yes. And that's where people are on the fence, like just kind of waiting, like when is that going to happen? And which is very scary.
I do want to add one more thing, because I did do coverage on this recently. In addition to the raids, we're seeing this pattern of off-duty ICE and Border Patrol agents essentially using their position of authority to brutalize, kill people. On New Year's Eve, an off-duty ICE agent, Brian Palacios, murdered Keith Porter while he was outside of his apartment complex celebrating New Year's Eve. And Keith Porter is a Black man, a U.S. citizen, and we are seeing more and more of these types of behaviors. Brian Palacios was not the first case of an off-duty ICE agent that engaged in misconduct. Not too long ago, there was something similar that happened in Long Beach, where the arresting officer for Adrian Martinez was caught in a women's bathroom brandishing a gun at a restaurant in Long Beach. And he was detained by the police and then eventually, from what I heard, overdosed. And before that, or around the same time, LA Taco broke a story about a off-duty ICE agent who was pulling over teenagers on his street because they were driving too fast. And he pulled a 17-year-old with like a gun. And so we're going to see repeated patterns of people basically exploiting their positions of authority to engage in misconduct and assault and behaviors. And this is one of the ways that I think we can actually find some sort of like legal ramifications happening. And I know that Black Lives Matter LA and Black Lives Matter Grassroots local chapter has been really pushing for legal accountability from the justice system.
Legal accountability from the justice system when they're not allowing investigations into people who've been shot and killed in cold blood and daylight. I'm obviously being cynical, but not really being factual. In addition to what you just said, I'm also seeing Border Patrol agents be more brazen. They're threatening people with people who are not doing anything that is illegal, just protesting. They're saying things like, I'm going to make you famous, which means I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to shut your mouth, or they're responding to taunts and to protesters in ways that are threatening. That's way above what they're supposed to be doing. And that goes to my point. These are not police officers. I think people believe that they're peace officers who know how to deal with the public. They do not. They see migrant as enemy. They are trained to see migrant as enemy. They're armed to the teeth. We see how they're dressed in army fatigues and they're masked. So if we expect them to be soft and easy, that's not their approach. They're not about de-escalation. They're the other way around.
Yeah, and I'll also push back on that and say there are a lot of former police officers that are now registered ICE agents. And so, I've never expected the police to be a more I guess, civil.
They're called peace officers. They're called community police. Regardless of whether or not they act that way is a whole other matter. But Border Patrol are trained in a paramilitary style.
I mean, the argument you're making is that they're trained a specific way. I would argue they're not trained at all.
Agree completely. They're poorly trained.
Yeah.
They have decreased the amount of time that it takes to train one.
Right. And they're mass recruiting people and enticing them with these like huge signing bonuses. And they're just kind of washing through desperate people.
Everybody.
Yeah.
No background checks. Mm-hmm. Come one, come all. If you have a high school diploma, great. If you don't, that's fine too.
Right. And there was that report reporter who, I forget her name, who registered for ICE, got accepted, and then, reported about it. And thankfully, she didn't take the job, but she reported, like, I got accepted for this job.
She didn't fulfill any of the requirements and became an ICE agent.
Right.
So at this point, anybody can be an ICE agent.
Right. So there's nothing there. There's no line. There's no, So I think what we are seeing right now is a lot of people, whether they're trained or not, in my opinion, it doesn't matter, who are engaging in illegal behaviors that violate people's rights.
And a court system that supports it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see in the time that Trump has been in office, there have been 9 people killed by ICE and or Border Patrol agents. We know of obviously the two most, I don't know if they're the most heinous, but the ones that are most known are the ones that happen in Minneapolis. But there have been migrants that have been killed, run over by cars, or shot and died in a hospital, those sorts of things. Not one of those agents has been prosecuted. There has been no indictment. As far as I can see, I can't find any evidence of an investigation against the agents involved. If a police officer in Los Angeles shoots somebody, even if it's in self-defense, there's an investigation. Whether you call it a sham or not, but there is an investigation. In these cases, there are 0 investigations because of the administration. So when they say you have complete immunity, federal officers have complete immunity, I think it's that way.
Yeah, I have moments where I also kind of spiral into myself and my reporting. And I think that is why it's so important to showcase the communities that are defending themselves, that are fighting back, and really platforming the voices of people who are standing alongside one another. And I will say, like, now more than ever, I really truly see who my people are and who I can depend on in a moment's notice.
Hear, hear. I agree with that. Thank you. Thank you for listening to The Raid, available wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about our guests and the subjects we cover, please visit our website at theraidpodcast.org.